I'm going to just give you credit here for the rise of Wes Huff. So
yeah, you're giving me credit too. So I wouldn't take it, but he said it verbatim. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. So.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Connector Podcast. Today's guest is my friend, Anton Wisbiski, former New Age marketing genius, working with big names like Billy Carson and Joe Dispenza. But things changed a few years back when he encountered the demonic and decided to switch to the winning team. Jesus. So with over 100 million generated for clients over the years, he now works with Christian entrepreneurs to help them scale their businesses to 20K months and beyond. He's got a bumpin' YouTube channel and also a school community where he helps men live great and purpose-filled lives. And on that note, if you guys want more of this kind of content, you want more intimate access to myself and even my network, folks like Anton, then I have my own school community called the Connector Fight Club, which is definitely geared more towards entrepreneurs, right? This is about helping entrepreneurs, founders, experts build their personal brands and really have tangible steps to success, networking with other like-minded winners. So it's community as well as actual practical knowledge and lessons and education, either through live calls or lessons I've recorded or just even my personal time in the comments, in the DMs, even one-on-one sessions. So if you want that, first link in the bio is my school community. I just launched actually a free 7-day intro to personal branding challenge. So if you go now, you get 7 days free access and you get access to that challenge in there. And there's tangible outcomes. You're going to get a lot of my time in those 7 days. So go now, link in the bio. No more advertisements. Let's get to the podcast. Same struggle in the early days of being an entrepreneur where I was on one hand reading Robert Kiyosaki books and who else? Dean Graziosi, Atomic Habits, all the basics, right?
Oh, yeah.
The basic gamut of how to win friends and influence people. And some of them were Christian authors. A lot of them were just secular. And on the other hand, it's this idea of like poverty is holy, even though it's not explicitly taught in the church. It's this almost thought process that, oh, you got a raise? Well, then you should give all of it away so that you'd never live above the means of just surviving. And any money outside of, the rich are evil and the rich are, it's just in the indoctrination as a Western Christian in the 2000s, especially. I mean, maybe in just the last 50 years. I don't know how long it's been going on, but it's interesting. And then you read through the Bible and you realize like, okay, in the Old Testament, almost everyone who was faithful were like the wealthiest people in the land. The New Testament had its time and it was for a time and a place, right? If Jesus came as a wealthy king, well, there's so many, it really detracts from the purpose of his mission. If his apostles were all wealthy guys, think about the amount of objections people give today. What if they could also say, oh, they just paid people. Well, they influenced the government. That story and the narrative doesn't work unless they had no power and influence, right? So it's like,
very true.
But for some reason, because the New Testament is prescriptive for us as Christians, people think that the poverty part, I think, is also prescriptive rather than that being the descriptive part of just the time and the place and the culture. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. And I think too, like God is neutral if you have wealth or if you're poor. He loves us just the same. And he doesn't shun the rich person in terms of them having money, being shunned for those reasons. He shuns people for sin. Right. So it's like the poorest person sinning or the rich person sinning, like he's going to shun them equally, but it has nothing to do with the money they're making, And I think just in general, people have poor money beliefs. Like they have a personal bad relationship with money, and therefore they project that onto other people. Or they've decided like, hey, I can't really win this game of business. It's really hard. It's really challenging. So therefore, I'm going to shame it and shun it and look upon the achiever and false virtue signal to pretend I'm doing better than I really am and hide behind religion. And it's like, I see through that bullshit.
And for gosh sake, watch your language.
That's not going away anytime soon.
Well, there really is
There's a lot of
I
that.
can't
There's a
I
lot of
can't
that.
tell you. I did. I don't know if I told you this. I did like MLM stuff for years, like with
Okay.
Amway, and it was a great experience. Like, I learned a lot. I was with good people. It wasn't the pyramid scheme side of the industry. It was really,
Right.
I would say, the healthy side of the industry. But the one
Right.
thing that I learned a lot was I would take people through this very extensive like vetting and education process to like join the team, right? If they wanted to be part of our mentorship group. And in that process, I can't tell you how many times I'd meet someone who, as soon as I meet them and we have our first meeting and I'm talking to them about opportunity for their life and starting a business and what it would look like to have, successful mentors pour into them, not just to do Amway, but to like actually help them in parts of their
Yeah.
life. And they would say, Josh, I was praying and you texted me out of nowhere or whatever, I bumped into you at the supermarket. God brought you in my life. Fast forward 2-3 meetings when I tell them the work it's going to take to actually get there. And hey, you're not going to be rich overnight. It's actually not get rich quick. In fact, you might be doing this for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and maybe you'll just replace your income. But it's the prospect of building something rather than nothing. What other options do you have? You came to me because you said you have no options. And then suddenly after that 2, 3, 4, that fourth meeting, well, Josh, I feel like God's calling me in a different direction. And it's like, oh, you have a very confused God that's calling you to me and calling you away from me. And I'm like, I don't know. And it was just the first time I ever saw people let their emotions and the prospect of hard work steer them away and use God as an excuse rather than realize maybe you do have an opportunity. You don't have to do Amway for the rest of your life, but at least start, at least try, right? It's like if God brought you here, let God carry you through it, right?
Mm.
Anyways.
Amen, dude. No, I love it. It's a great healthy conversation, and I think the vast majority of people won't be successful. That's just the statistical facts. I mean,
Yeah.
you're in the top 1% in America, I believe, if you're making, I think it's 650,000, something like that. Don't
Mhm.
quote me, it's give or take. And, to make 600 grand a year, that's hard. That takes a lot of work. That's not going to just fall into your lap without discipline, devotion, a good business, a good offer, good marketing, all the practical things it takes to scale. So I think when people, they might start that journey of like, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur and rise to success. And then they realize, oh, this is actually not a 9 to 5. This is like a 8 to 8, 6 days a week for 10 years.
And I'm a firefighter.
Right, right. And some people are cut out for that and some people aren't. And, I don't have an issue if somebody's not cut out for it or not. I'm completely indifferent to it. But
Of
I have
course.
an issue with the person who um, hides behind, like we were saying, hides behind theology or religion or Christianity or whatever to justify, oh, God doesn't want me to have that. No, no, no. You're actually just a lazy piece of poop, dude. Like, and you're scared. You're scared you're going to fail. You're scared if you put yourself out there and you try and you don't succeed. Well, what does that mean about your identity then? So people do all types of funny things to avoid responsibility. And it doesn't matter if it's in like the new age context or Christian context. It's really just a psychological thing that plays out in my observation from growing businesses in multiple different businesses all from the time I was 16,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a good transition, by the way. Even
Cool.
though we had a fun little intro that you guys saw when we started, I know we just kind of dived in here, but I
Yeah.
do want to at least recognize and acknowledge the fact that this is episode 1 of season 3. So welcome back, everybody. But also the massive elephant in the room, if anybody's looking at this and is like, okay, am I just watching Josh talk to himself? Or if they're in your audience, am I watching Anton just record himself with different lighting? And I don't know if we have any biological similar markers. We haven't done a 23andMe yet. But no, we are not indeed related. My friend Anton, I meant to ask, how do I say your last name? Is it Wisbiski?
Wisbiski, yeah.
Wisbiski. And remind me, you're Polish, is it?
Polish and Italian, yeah.
Okay. Oh, you are Italian as well.
I got the pistoli right here. How you doing?
I'm. Are you more one or the other, or 50-50?
I think it's just 50-50, yeah.
Okay, nice. I'm more Greek. I'm like 50% Greek, and then quarter Italian, quarter French. I never say French though. Sorry, guys. I just say Italian and Greek. But
Nice.
anyways, welcome back, everybody. Anton, thanks for joining me, man. This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, good to be here.
We're going to get into, I mean, if you guys can't tell from this conversation already, we're both into business. We're both Christian men, although I want to hear a little bit more about your story, Anton, because you weren't always a good, you're Orthodox, correct?
Mhm.
So you weren't always a good Orthodox, altar boy. You had some interesting past in the New Age space, and not just an interesting past, but like you were working with the biggest names in the space, doing, I mean, millions in revenue. Like you had a full-on massive business working with guys like, correct me if I'm wrong, Billy Carson, Joe Dispenza, like big names. I'll let you kind of tell your story, but then the shift that led to you, and I really want to get into this, but just a teaser, led to you introducing and making connections that I'm going to just give you credit here for the rise of Wes Huff. So
Yeah, he's giving me credit too. So I wouldn't take it, but he said it verbatim. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. So I'll take it.
so we'll both take it. That
Yeah.
being said, yeah, man, we're going to get into some fun stuff. So just to give you, I guess, hello, let me rewind that. Just to give you guys some context, that's why I have an editor. He's going to leave that in. We're going to get into a few kind of primary topics today, and we'll just flow naturally and see where the Lord brings us in this chat. But the evils of New Age, or is it evil? Christian theology, business, mental health, and how these things kind of intersect. Oh, there you go. All my emoji reactions are present. And it's going to be a good conversation. Now, I actually want to do this with you beforehand, and then I forgot. But maybe for the best. Let's do this right now while we're recording. Let's just say a quick prayer together and just make sure this conversation goes in a good place. And I think it's also good for people to see that Christians actually do Christian things, not for show, but because we actually believe it. And so, just really quick, Lord, I just thank you so much for this opportunity right now to talk to my brother physically and spiritually about some really important topics, and really just share some wisdom and some hopefully impactful things with his audience, my audience, and whoever decides to stumble upon this video. And I just ask for clarity and peace of mind for both of us as we have this conversation, so that we can, again, just communicate things that would help those listening on a deep level, on a educational level, and ultimately that we can just be good stewards of the lives that you've given us. So thank you, Lord. I was going to say, please bless this food. We're not eating. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Sometimes you have those just reflex things. Please bless this food to our bodies. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Yeah.
I'm like, nope, not eating, just drinking Monster. So, okay. Let's dive in a little bit here. Tell me, so let's go back a bit. Were you raised Christian, Orthodox, Catholic? How did you get into New Age? Take me through the story, as much or as little as you want to dive into, and then we'll just springboard from there.
Yeah. So yeah, I was raised Catholic. My parents are Roman Catholic. And we went to church every Sunday kind of thing, went to church on Christmas. But no one really ever I mean, I did go through the catechism as a kid, but when you're a kid, you don't really care. Like church is not something you care about because you don't really understand. At least that was my perspective. Like I hated it. You know, and you learn your Hail Marys and your Our Fathers and the Nicene Creed and all the basics, and you go to your first confession at like whatever 10 years old. It's like so stupid, honestly. God forgive me, but it's not stupid.
Catholics are in the comments right now.
Yeah, no, I love the Catholic faith. Orthodox is the same thing, but and I don't think this is really the church's fault. I think it was more so my parents' fault, and his parents' faults in general, is that I don't think my mom or my dad could really explain the gospel. Like till this day, I don't think they can do it. But they go and do all the rituals and get communion and all the things, and I think that's problematic. But that's also downstream from like their parents, and I think parents have a job to do that. So, anyways, getting off topic. Grew up cradle Catholic. Never really necessarily believed. Never really had a connection with Jesus per se. and church was just kind of like something we did as a family, and that was it. When I was 16 years old, I watched a movie called The Secret, and that was kind of my new religion because it made a lot more sense to me that, you take your thoughts. If you don't know what The Secret is, it's pretty much a little documentary that's super cheesy, but pretty much says that your thoughts and your feelings and emotions kind of change the world around you. And if you dream big and visualize and believe you can achieve, like things will come into your life that will help that plan unfold. Well, as a 16-year-old ambitious, kid with not really a lot of education and kind of didn't see school as a route for success for me, I really grabbed onto this because there was like an underlying, what I believed was a truth statement in it that made a lot of sense. And I still do believe there is an ounce of truth in it. And the big thing that stood out to me was how our thinking affects what we do. And I believe that's still true till this day. And, then I got introduced to books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which talks about, hey, there's this guy who has this rich dad. And the reason he's rich is because how he sees the world. And the poor dad's poor because he's not listening to the right people. He might be smart, but the advice that he's taking is not enough to succeed in this world. So I got introduced to like this plethora of, new agey concepts. And it wasn't all new agey, but there was new age in it.
Mm.
And I was just hooked right away. And I was like, screw school, screw all this crap. Like I'm gonna become a personal development like junkie. I wouldn't say it then, but I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna master myself. That was kind of the plan. And I'm gonna master my mind and become successful. And
Did you have
short,
affirmations on sticky notes?
yeah, right. Scream in the mirror, I am rich. Shortly after that, I attracted something into my life, right? I attracted something, and it was a opportunity to, get into sales pretty much. And at 16 years old, I started doing sales, and I actually crushed it. Like I did really good. I was selling to my friends, my family, anybody possible, and I made good money. And again, I really equated my success at this young age to the manifesting, to the law of attraction.
Mhm.
Fast forward, that kind of mentality ended up taking me into a place where, um, I guess how long or short should I go into this? But, that business ended up not working out. I was dead broke, sleeping on a friend's couch, like trying to figure out what the hell to do with my life. And I was, I think, 18 or 19 at this time, and I got into door-to-door sales. So I was just like, I need to pay my bills. I had rent. I moved out when I was 19. I had rent. I had a car note. And I was like, I got to figure this out. So I go into door-to-door sales, end up quitting that after like a year or some change because they were just pretty much teaching you to lie, literally to lie, to sell. Like we were
Yeah.
selling AT&T cable and stuff, and we were just lying to get people to sign up. And we were like
Hey,
locking
if the
them in.
bell guy that came to my door that sold us internet, I know I'm blurry now. If you see this, screw you, man. Absolute crazy lies. So much hassle. Anyway,
Yeah, it's
sorry, I
crazy.
digress.
No,
But
no,
also, I
but
hope you
yeah,
find Jesus.
so, I got exposed. All right, so I gained the skill of sales that I ended up quitting, and I moved into my grandma's basement because I was completely lost and broke, and I was like, what the hell do I do with my life? At that time, I started working with one of my friends who had a company called Vibe Source, which is still around today. And he was working with a man named Bob Proctor, who's like a very big new age kind of speaker. He did pass a few years
Yeah.
ago.
He was like
Uh,
the keynote, if you will, in The
One of the
Secret, wasn't
OGs,
he?
for sure. One of the OGs, yeah. And I saw what Spencer was doing, and I just really was attracted to it, mainly because Bob was a teacher of mine when I was like into the manifesting stuff. And I reached out to him. I was like, dude, like I'll work for your company for free. I just quit my job. Like I'm just trying to like be a part of something positive. And that's what I did. And pretty much what I ended up doing was learning the skill set of how to edit videos, how to do social media. And this is 10 years ago, so it's a very different game back then, very very different. And I made myself irreplaceable. Like even though I was like living in my grandma's basement, working this minimum wage job, I every single day, like for probably 6 to 8 hours after my job, I would just hustle trying to provide value to him.
Mm.
Long story short, what ended up happening was he got an opportunity to work with a man named Logan Paul. And
Oh
Logan
yeah.
Paul's very famous. He's in the WWE now. Back then, he was like a YouTuber, entrepreneur. And because I had made myself so irreplaceable in terms of the value I was bringing to this guy, Spencer was like, "Hey, you need to come with me to California. Like we're like I'm gonna need your help on like set with Logan." And then he was like, "I'll teach you how to do the shit." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "I have no experience, dude." I was like, "But I'm in." You know, for him, it was like I have a free employee pretty
Yeah.
much. And for me, I was like, "Dude, get me the hell out of Michigan." Like, you know, I'm 20 years old, 21, probably just turned 21 at this time. And then, you know, packed up our bags, threw them in a car, drove to California, and that's really when my life really started to change pretty dramatically. I mean, being around someone like Logan Paul a lot and like seeing the intensity and like work ethic and discipline and luxury lifestyle and the girls and the money and the fame, it's like, whoa, you know, as a 21-year-old, it's a very attractive thing. And in this time, I continued nurturing that skill set of social media for Spencer, and I got really, really good at what I did. I started making the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like I got really good at marketing, and you know, to make a long story short, I hit a point where I realized I was more valuable than what they were paying me. Like I was only making a couple grand a month.
Yeah.
I was completely broke. I mean, I was just enough to pay my bills, and maybe if I was lucky, I had just a tiny bit extra, maybe. Um,
You
and
were
I
just
hit this
taking the free caviar at the Logan Paul parties.
yeah, right, exactly. Um, and I hit this point where I was like, you know, screw these guys. I'm making them at this time probably like 500 grand to 700 grand per year through just my efforts in marketing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm getting 2 to 3 grand a month. And I started like thinking about this, and I brought it up to them, and we just didn't see things eye to eye. You know, me and Spencer are very close friends today, but back then he was kind of a little, in my opinion, like not the best entrepreneur. And I was like, I'm just going to go start my own thing. So I did. And my first client was Joe Dispenza. And Joe
Crazy
Dispenza,
first client.
crazy first client. And the way I went to one of his events, I was pretty blown away. And then I pitched him. I had this strange opportunity where I was in the same room with him. I just went right up to him. I was like, dude, you're the best kept secret. I just like really filled his ego with a lot of pride. And I also believed what I was saying. I wasn't just tooting his horn. And at the time, of course, I do not approve of Joe Dispenza's work at all as a Christian. But at that time, it was like, this is awesome. You know, this was taking all of the new age philosophies that I learned as a young kid and like adding the science, quote unquote, and adding this deeper level to it. And I was just so hooked. And Joe ended up hiring me, and that was a six-figure contract, and my life just completely changed. After that, within like 6 months, I was making like $500,000 a year. I had multiple clients, and I also really started blowing Joe up. Like, cause you know, this was 2017 ish.
Hmm.
And Joe wasn't really that known back then like he is today. When I started with him, he had 20,000 followers. When I ended with him, he had 1.4 million. So, you
Sheesh.
know, I did my job. And that testimonial really brought in I mean, millions and millions of dollars into my company because people were like, who's doing this? So I
Right.
attracted a lot of new age kind of speakers and gurus. And to be frank, some of the, you know, just to be honest, some of the scummiest people in the world. Um, God forgive me, you know, I'm totally judging them. And I started to like, what started to shift for me was when I started to notice how scummy they were. Like, wow, these people are actually like evil. Like they're not even it's not even that like it's not even like they're just assholes. Like they're actually manipulative. Like they're actually intentionally malicious. Like I'm like, screw
Mm.
this. And after like five, you know, 5, 6, 7 experiences of that, I hit the point of like, the money's not even worth it. Like I can't do this for my soul. I was like, these are bad people. And simultaneously, I started wondering kind of why that was. Like, was it hunger for power, greed, fame, and I'm sure that was mixed into it. But then I kind of just spiritually discerned that, like, oh, like the power source or energy source these people are pulling from is actually just not a good source. Like, it's
And would you
not.
say you were still like, would you consider yourself a Catholic at that point, or
Oh, no,
that you
no, no,
believed in God, or you
no,
kind
no,
of
no.
just let those beliefs down? And you,
I believed. So I actually had a born again experience um, in 2017, oddly enough, right before I found Joe, which was strange.
hmm,
Um, it was, and I could tell that story. It's pretty interesting. But no, so I wouldn't identify with the label of Christian back then, but I would absolutely believe there's a guiding force or power, not necessarily like a personal God, but that there is some higher, love that cares about me,
yeah,
essentially.
like a divine
Yeah.
guidance of some kind. Yeah.
Kind of like more of a Hindu belief system of like an impersonal force of goodness,
Yeah.
essentially.
It's interesting. The more spiritual you get, the more like watered down and diversified your beliefs become. Well, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this.
Well,
But
that's
anyways,
New Age 101, you know? So, yeah, so I'll remind me to tell that born again experience because it's pretty cool.
sure.
I'll share that a little later. But, yeah, I started questioning these people. I started to see like, hey, they're not good people. And then, like I said, I started realizing like, there's maybe like a spiritual element to this all. And then, I went through like a really hard breakup and I went through these really challenging things. And I started to wonder if the spirituality I was believing in was from God. Like, I started to question this. And
Mm.
I ended up having some scary spiritual experiences where I came in contact with like literally a person who was demon possessed. And like all of the new age tools I used couldn't really work. I mean,
You
in
couldn't
the
sage them
way.
away.
No, no, definitely not. And it scared the living hell out of me. And it made me think like, maybe I got something wrong. Like, I'm under the delusion of like, I know the secrets of the universe. I'm making all the money I want. I'm doing what I want to do. I love my life. I'm vibrating at a high level. Like, I got this figured out, Pride comes before the fall, right?
Hmm.
And then something, came in contact with me, which was a woman who was completely demon possessed. And um, it really rocked me. I mean, it really rocked me. I mean, I was not the same, still not fully recovered from that. I mean, that was a hell of an experience. And it made me start to think like, okay, like I've always believed in this higher power. Obviously, I've always had a knowingness God is with me and loves me. But I was a little bit naive of evil. And that is something that is a very common belief system in New Age. They don't really believe in evil. They don't
Mm.
believe in that theology. And I think
It's more subjective realities.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And if you don't believe in evil, ugh, that's the devil's greatest trick, right? Convincing you he's not real. Well, if he's
Yeah.
not real, everything's fair game. So that's why if you look at the morality and the values of those people, they're very open sexually. They usually have multiple partners. People are into that world. Those two worlds blend very deeply because they don't believe in sin. I mean, it's not evil. It's not wrong. It's
Yeah.
just, it's just
You're
part of
expressing your true
humanity.
self, Anton.
No, you're expressing your true self. Like, this is what God wants for you. And even though I was steeped into that world, I never believed that. I always stayed away from that stuff. I was like, there's just something wrong about this. And maybe that was my Catholic, Holy Spirit protecting me. I was
The Catholic
baptized as
guilt.
a baby, yeah, there's something. Um, but yeah, I mean, and then, once that whole experience happened, that was the starting point for me. And it even started before that, but that was like the domino of like, oh, I can't do this. Like, I can't promote ideas that are new agey because the fruits are sour. And I
Yeah.
started looking at like the people who would go to these retreats and events, and like they were very, unfortunately, like very broken people. And it's not like we have to have it all figured out, but like things
They
like
were looking for purpose and meaning, and they were trying to cling to something.
that, yes, but it was even more so the dynamic of the family. Like, it was primarily divorced people. or people who were looking to get divorced. And there was this very strange, like, people would go to these retreats, they'd have these experiences, and the first thing they're doing is leaving their husband, or vice versa. And I just started to notice this pattern, and I was like, something's not right here. So that mixed with people just seeming like ungrounded and unconnected to reality. And I've always been like an astute, kind of aware person, and like I kind of always been obsessed with like human psychology. And I was kind of like, this whole industry kind of has this really big shadow, and it pretends like we're all love and light, but actually there's this very devious other thing that they're kind of naive to and rejecting. So therefore it manifests in these very unconscious ways. And it's very ugly from the things I've seen. So
Not a
yeah,
lot of Republican voters at those retreats, I imagine. Not to make it
1%.
political. I'm just saying.
1%. Yeah, very liberal.
Also,
for sure.
before we get a little too far away
Hyper-liberal.
from this,
Yeah.
I would love to know if you're open to sharing a little bit more, because I'm sure anyone listening is also curious. Like, what does this mean? Demonic experience with a woman? How did you know? What happened? Like I said, if you don't want to go too deep into it, we don't have to. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes even talking about these things, sometimes we almost don't want to give too much for different reasons. But can you break that down a little bit more, just so we have context?
Yeah. So I was speaking at one of my events. There was probably about 60 people there, and the event was closing out, and this woman came up to me, and I thought she was trying to give me a hug. And long story short, she tried to choke me, like physically assault me. And right before she did it, I saw like her pupils were completely black, like full blown. And I just got this complete like scary feeling. And I was just like, no way. Like, this is something evil. This is something bad. And long story short, I could feel that there was, this kind of, evil presence. And at the time, the only way I could describe it was that it was something demonic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was terrifying, man. And there's obviously more to it, and um, I don't talk about it all that much. I have a video on my YouTube about it, like the full details. But she was actually,
We'll link it here.
stalking. Yeah. She was actually stalking me, and it turned out, she had some serious mental health problems. But I think it was more than just mental health. There was something I could feel it and see it. I mean, it was very obvious, and it was
Yeah.
intense. The police got involved. It was very embarrassing too, because I didn't know what the hell to do. It's like, what the hell do you do? So yeah, but what's strange is that you know with an experience like that, it makes you realize that God's love comes in different forms. And I really learned, like, although, yes, there was like a demonic evil thing, I do believe God allowed it to happen so that I could get closer to him and realize, like, dude, you can't do this alone. Like, this is not by your own power. There is a God, Jesus Christ specifically, that loves you and will protect you, and that wants you to rely on him so you can like have peace and know the goodness of God, and like trust that you're spiritually connected and safe, and all of these things that I didn't really have.
Yeah.
Like personal relationship, it was like, like I said, I believed in this impersonal kind of force, but I didn't have a personal, very intimate relationship with Christ.
Yeah, it's crazy too. There's a story, not to get us off track, but it's so related. It was I forget the guy's name. If I think of it, I'll make sure to pull up his face. He was a satanic high priest, and this is maybe like 20 something years ago. And he met a girl. They started dating. She had no idea, but she was Christian, and so she invited him to church, and he went to church with her as a joke. Like, he thought he was going to mock God by being in God's house. And he had so much arrogance in his practice and within Satanism. And literally at the end of the service, I think I might be misquoting a couple things, but I think it was like an altar call or something. He went up, and again, just like you, the pastor thought the guy was coming to like get prayer or something, and he said he grabbed the pastor by the neck with like one hand, lifted him off the ground, literally, like it just demonic strength, and in that moment when he was just, and he had, power, and he just felt like this is, he looked back, and rather than people tackling him or whatever, because everybody, I guess, could just discern that this is not natural, he said he looked back and the congregation was all just heads down in prayer and hands out. And he literally said he felt like the demonic presence just like ripped from him, and he dropped the pastor. And then people came over him, and again, rather than restraining and beating him up, they were laying hands and praying for him. And that was his tilt into, what am I doing? Am I aligned with the right power? And anyways, I won't tell the rest of that guy's story, but similar type of experience, except he was the one doing the demonic activity, right? So crazy stuff I've learned over the years from that realm of things.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I think some people get too obsessed with evil, and that starts to cloud them, and that we have to remember who's really in control here. God is in control ultimately. So if there's evils happening, I believe God's allowing it. And there's also like things that are psychological in nature too, where it's not like not everything's a demon, not everything's evil. Sometimes people are just psychologically messed up, and we got to fix those things. But
and I do find a lot of times they do intersect, whether, especially I find, and this is Josh's opinion, don't come after me. I find when the psychological issues are induced by things like drug use or psychedelics or whatever, and like one of my cousins, God rest his soul, I hope, he was so broken mentally that I pray God had, mercy on him, because he was a really sweet kid, but mom was a stripper, dad was, his dad was my uncle, and literally had a heart attack from all his years of cocaine and drug use, had a heart attack outside of the hospital. Thankfully, they actually saved him, and they told him, if you continue this life, your heart's going to explode and you're going to be dead within, weeks. Literally, I think it was a month later, they ended up finding him dead in a warehouse. I think his heart actually exploded because he's just drug use. And so that's his son now, who through drug use as a kid developed schizophrenia. And so all of his, and he died. I'm older than him now, I think, at 31. I think he was maybe late 20s, maybe 30. And yeah, the schizophrenia was so delusional. He was living in a different reality. And it's like, I find a lot of times when you open those doors through drug use, I think you also toe the line of opening yourself up spiritually. I do believe there are some people that, unfortunately are born with neurons firing the wrong way, or chemical imbalances. And maybe it is purely physical in terms of the illness, or mental, if you will. But I do believe there's a line, especially when you invite things through illicit means, and then it's both, right? It's like, if it's a physiological thing that doctors can prescribe, but there is also a spiritual oppression on that person. I very much believe that.
100%. Same. But to get back to the story, so those things started. I had a couple more experiences like that, not as intense, but it was just like prevalent. And I was like, everybody like who experienced that at the event were like, you need to go to church. Like, you need to go to church. I was like, screw you guys. Like, this is just energy. It's not that. This is something different. And I had never read the Bible. I didn't really know what the Bible said about this stuff. So long story short, I started wondering about Christianity. And then I read a really good book. Dang it, I'm forgetting what it is.
Do you know who the author was?
A masculine, kind of like a wild at heart.
John Eldridge. Love that book.
So I read that book not knowing it was a Christian book. I had no idea. And I just thought it was like a masculine development book, because after this experience, my thought wasn't like, I need God. My thought was that, wow, Anton, you are so naive. You really have believed your whole life there's no evil, and there is. And that really got me really deep into masculine development and like what would be called maybe shadow work. But it was like, I was very weak. I was a very weak person. I thought I was virtuous, but I really wasn't. I was really just weak. I wasn't capable of, protecting myself or hurting somebody in the sake of protecting myself or somebody else. So I got really deep into martial arts, and I got hooked on that because I realized like, wow, like aggression isn't bad if it's in a healthy form. Like being able to kill somebody if you need to is a good thing if they're trying to kill you or somebody else. It's like the psychopaths get put away from good people who have the ability to use the sword. You know, it's like be innocent as a dove, wise as a serpent, as Christ tells us.
I think Jordan Peterson said too, something along the lines of like, you're not virtuous because you're weak and nonviolent. You're virtuous because you could kill someone and you choose to protect, or you choose to restrain yourself. Like the idea of you can, but you don't. And that's
exactly
restrained power.
Yes, exactly. And I got really big into doing things in my life that would challenge my beliefs around like almost like detox the new age bullshit that like everything is love and light.
Right.
I needed to go to the opposite end to realize, no, like there are people who want to hurt you. There are bad people. You've been working with them for years now. Like this whole thing is actually just a vehicle people use as a disguise for power, fame, or money or whatever. So I got really kind of into all that, and then I read that book. And this was the first time I ever read scripture. And dude, I started reading scripture, and it was like making me feel these really deep things. And he wasn't, he just put these little simple things in there. Maybe something on the Sermon on the Mount, or
I love sneaky Christian books like that.
Yeah, so good. So good. Shout out to him. And man, I was just so gripped because I had this whole new model of masculinity. And that's when Christ really was like, I didn't look at Christ anymore as like, because the New Age believes in Jesus. They just believe in a different Jesus.
He's a total hippie, for sure.
Yeah. Hippie, he's a yogi, he's a this, he's a that. Like whatever belief
he went to India and taught the Buddha, all those things.
Jesus is a tantra master. Like whatever they have prior, they believe that's what Jesus is.
Right.
And that reading the scripture and seeing Jesus in context actually made me want to go to church. So I started going to a Protestant non-denominational church, and I was just like,
as we all do.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I was like, this is awesome. This is amazing. But I still wasn't, entirely convinced. It took me some time. And there's so many different stories I can tell. I'm kind of choosing which to choose. But long story short, I got invited to, and this is when I am now like starting to identify as a Christian. Like, okay, I'm going to church every week. I'm still not fully convinced on like the validity of Christ in terms of, maybe some of the more Gnostic gospels, which are very popular in the New Age. Like, I'm not fully, like, I'm convinced Jesus is solid. Like, I don't know if he's God, but he's definitely not just a normal man. Like,
so you hadn't fully said like the sinner's prayer, like you hadn't fully given that. Okay.
I hadn't done that yet. But again, I'm trying, right? I'm going to church. I'm trying to like believe it. I was really forcing myself. I'm like, I'm really trying to give in, because I just wanted to be honest though too. Like I was like, I'm not fully there yet. Like I need a little bit more evidence. Like, has the Bible been corrupted?
That infancy gospel of Thomas still got you hooked.
Right. So then I get invited to go to a New Year's Eve party at Billy Carson's house.
Oh, nice.
And again,
was he already a client?
Not at this time. We had worked together a few years before. And at this time, it's like I am more Christian than more New Age. Like, because for me, it was like New Age is just filled with bullshit. Like, I wasn't really overly convinced on like, I looked at the people in New Age and I was like, these are just more like con artists. Like these are more like good salesmen that sell these good ideas to naive people. And I'm just kind of like, I still have some clients at this time, but I have made the obvious transition in my business. Like I let a few clients go. I started intentionally being like, I'm just not doing this. So, I still have friends. Like I'm still friends with a lot of these speakers and these big players, Billy being one of them. And like when I say friends, like people on the internet were like, dude, you cooked your boy. Like, who needs enemies when they got friends like you? It's like we weren't like homies. It was just like I made him money. He made me money. We kind of used each other for business, and it was super surface level. We maybe had 1 or 2 private hangouts in the course of our like 7-year relationship. It's like,
yeah, you're pleasant professional acquaintances.
exactly. We're not like best friends. Like people on the internet just huck up the most interesting scenarios. And I'll talk about why I'm saying that in a second. So I'm at this Billy Carson's New Year's party, and I just see this guy, and I'm just totally drawn to his presence. Just like something was different about this guy, and I couldn't like figure it out. Like I have a pretty good read on people. It's just like a sixth sense I've kind of always had. And I'm like, man, there's something different about this guy. Like there's something, I don't know what it is.
He was looking cute.
No, it was like a spiritual thing. It was like a spiritual thing. And I started to talk to him. And I just, I found out he's this like really successful entrepreneur. He had just moved into that neighborhood. And, Billy lives in, probably like a $4 or $5 million house. So it's like a very, Boca Raton, Florida, very upper echelon area. And, I just started talking to him. He asked me what I do. I tell him about my social media company, this and that. He's like, oh, dude, I've been looking for somebody. So, that was it. And then a week or 2 later, we ended up meeting up and I went to his house. And, to make a fast story short, he ended up becoming one of my clients. And this was kind of one of my first clients that was not like a new age guru type or even a guru type at all. It was just more of like, this is a real entrepreneur with a real business. He had a business that was in like the healthcare space that helped people with developmental disabilities kind of like give them like a bit of a sanctuary and like give them jobs. And
I didn't know
it's
that.
really cool. It's called Dream Shine. It's in Ohio. You can look it up. It's a great business.
Yeah.
Very successful guy. And we started building this really beautiful relationship. And from the rip, I'm like, this is a good person. Like I just had this like, this is like a good human being. Like I like this guy. He's a good leader. Like the way he communicates, it just totally changed my paradigm on like what a business owner could be if they weren't like malicious and like in it for themselves. And it really just like touched my heart in a really big way. So we started developing this relationship. He ends up signing up as a client and I was like really excited. I really start over delivering for him, getting him really good results. And then we just kind of start hanging out more. He lived 15 minutes from me and I was like, he was just a really positive influence. And I was going to his house to help him with content and, all the things I do with my company. And then one day I'm in his office and I'm looking at his bookshelf and I see a picture of his baptism, like as a picture of him being baptized. He never said he was a Christian. I never asked. I didn't care. Like, and again, this is when I'm kind of going through this period of like, God is like working on me and trying to call me to him. And I'm going there. I was like, oh, like, what's that? He's like, oh, that's my baptism. Like, I'm a Christian. And I was like, oh, cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm one too. Kind of still figuring it out. And then like I go to the other side and this book kind of grabbed me. It was this really old book. And I grabbed it and I was like, what's this? He goes, oh, that's our great grandpa's Bible from World War II that he kept with him like when he was in the trenches. And I like opened it up. Wow, it's a Bible. Like it was this really cool thing. So it was just like these strange little, Holy Spirit kind of working. And then he just kind of shared his testimonial with me. And he was like, dude, like I used to be in jail. Like I was messed up. I was, this really bad person. And, I found Jesus and he lives in me. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? Like,
we're talking about the same Billy Carson, right? The one.
No, this isn't Billy Carson.
Oh, wait, who's this?
This is the person I met at Billy Carson's house. Remember how I said I was drawn to somebody?
Oh,
You stupid.
sorry. For some reason I'm like, that's why I'm like, I didn't know all this about Billy Carson.
No. Billy Carson does not believe in Jesus.
That's why I'm like, oh, when did he turn?
No. So this was the guy I met at Billy's house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The guy I was drawn to. Yeah.
Oh,
is
this? Well, I mean, I think I know who it's going to end up being. Is this the Mark or?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Continue.
So this is Mark. And yeah, he just tells me his testimonial, and I saw God in his eyes. I don't know how to explain it. Like I saw Jesus or the Holy Spirit. Like it was so present, and he was saying things that like I don't even know he know I needed like it was very strange. But it
Mm-hmm.
was so gentle. And it wasn't like trying to persuade me. It was just the Holy Spirit really working through him. And it planted these massive seeds, dude. And I ended up having like 4 or 5 more experiences just like that. One of them was with my jujitsu coach, who I didn't know was a pastor. Had no idea he was a pastor. He
Yo,
was like
the
he's like
jujitsu coach who's also a pastor is crazy.
yeah, he's like he's a charismatic. Not like he's my old he's just like a
Who's speaking in tongues while he's choking you
I don't
out?
know if it's that far, but he's definitely like, you know, very intense.
Go to sleep, child, and I'll wake you with the power of the Spirit.
Yeah, there was this really bizarre experience I had with him where I felt like I was getting closer to God, and there was like a lot of spiritual warfare trying to like convince me that, no, you know, it's there was like a battle for my whole soul or something. And I remember this experience where he came over to like we were in jujitsu class and we're trying to do this move and I can't quite figure it out. And when he touched me, like he's like, you put your hand here and he like grabbed my wrist. And he's like, this goes here and this goes here.
Mhm.
I got completely like sedated by like a presence of what I would say like energy and this like crazy level of peace washed over me. And it was like so intense. I was like, I can't even do jujitsu right now. And then I ended up like contemplating like, what the hell was that? I was just like so weird. And then I looked him up online and it's like he has no social media. Then I kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. And then I ended up finding one of his sermons on YouTube. And I was like, he's a pastor. And I felt that. I was like, Jesus? You know, so a lot of weird stuff like this started happening to me.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
I started going deeper into the history of Christianity. And that's when I found Wes Huff. So I found Wes Huff and I was really, you know, that was a lot of God's grace because he kind of gave my analytical mind the things it needed to like put the final pieces together in my faith of like, okay, because the New Age will like talk about how like the history of Christianity is totally wonky. And the
Right.
Bible is, you know, corrupted by Constantine and these pagan emperors and all this bullcrap.
And this council and that council.
Yeah, exactly. And the conspiracy theories and all this stuff. And it really like, you know,
Tom Hanks was right.
Right. So, you know, I started going really deep into that. And then through Wes's work, I was convinced the Bible is reliable. And then the last kind of nail in that coffin was disproving the Gnostic understandings. And once I saw that, I was fully convinced. Then I started to like go really deep into theology and like I read the full Bible and I read a couple really good books, but one of them showed how, you know, the Old Testament like really was, I mean, it sounds so basic, but if you don't have the context, it's hard to know. Like the Old Testament is pointing to Christ as fulfillment of everything.
Yeah.
From even, you know, everything. And I started to see how like the Psalms were connected to Christ and like him singing the Psalms on the cross and all these different things, Isaiah 53. And it was just like, I had like this ego death of like, oh my gosh, like, I think this is real. Like, I think
Right.
this is fully true.
Yeah.
And it was just like a full blown, like, all right, I'm all in.
That's a really good point, by the way, about the context. Like, how many people have you heard say, well, if Jesus is God, why would he say, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's like, is it Psalm 23? Is that the one he's quoting?
I think 22 or 23, Orthodox one separate.
Oh, okay. So, but the point being is like, okay, but who's he speaking to? What is he saying? So we know for a fact he's quoting scripture. So let's go to that scripture. Let's look at the context. What was David writing in the Psalms and who, right? And so when you actually understand, you put the context together, and even a lot of it is also cultural context of, again, the audience and who he's speaking to, you realize that no, he's not complaining about God, where are you? He's literally fulfilling prophecy in that moment, right? And it's like, how much more powerful is that realization?
Yes. he's praying, and what's so beautiful, there's a really good book on this called The Crucifixion of Glory, I think, by Dr. Jeannie Constantino. I interviewed her. She's fantastic, incredible
Cool.
scholar. Probably one of the best scholars of our time, who, like, very unknown. But if you read Psalm 22, it's so it's 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 Christ explaining what's happening to him right now. If you read the whole context, like towards the end, or in the middle, I guess it says, many bulls surround me, strong bulls of Bashan encircle me, roaring lions that tear their prey, open their mouths wide against me. I am poured out like water, and all of my bones are out of joint. It's just like, it's him on the cross, and he's pointing to himself in that moment. And
Yeah.
when I started, like, because it's one thing to, like, hear that from another person, but then, like, when you read it yourself, and then you see, and I'm, like, flipping from, like, the Psalms to the New Testament, and I'm, like, going back and forth, and I'm like, it's him. And I was like, wow. So it just, I had a lot of moments where I'm just, like, crying, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, whoa, this is
Sometimes I
not
like to think,
what it was.
yeah, there's do you know what Watchmen is, like the graphic novel?
Mhm.
Did you ever
I
end up
don't, I'm
watching?
not familiar with the overall context too much.
Okay, so there's a character, they ended up making a TV series, but one of the characters, Dr. Manhattan, part of his power set is kind of like, I don't know what they would even call it. I don't know, interdimensional, simultaneous acknowledgement. Let's call it that.
Okay.
So there's a point in the show, and it was really cool the way they did it. He's speaking to somebody in like 1942 while simultaneously experiencing and living what's happening in 2001, and it's happening at the same time for him.
Right.
And but they're kind of fulfilling each other. It was
Yeah.
really interesting how to see it in cinema, but there's
Right.
moments in the Bible like that where you almost think, well, if God is outside of time and space and he created time and space, how many things were happening simultaneously? I guess everything technically is happening simultaneously, but even I don't know if you've heard of this. I like to believe this. This is not backed by anything specific, but the moment in the New Testament, I believe it's right at Pentecost, when the disciples see Jesus talking to, if I'm not mistaken, it's Moses and Elijah on the mountain.
Mhm.
In that moment, it's the way I like to think of it is, what if that is the moment in time where God is also speaking to Moses through the burning bush and giving Moses the 10 commandments, and also speaking to Elijah? Like, what if that's the same moment in time, which is what the apostles are experiencing, which also, carries through their belief and their amazement. Like, I don't know. Again, there's no backing for that specific belief. I've heard that theory, and I'm like, it could be.
Yeah, it's possible. It's definitely
So,
possible. I mean, God is God, right? And I think the Bible is a living text, right? It's not just a book. It's something much, much deeper. Even like in the, Orthodox theology, something like Revelation, like, we don't believe that's some distant thing.
right.
We believe that's happening right now and has always happened. There's always, antichrists, and they're in every generation. I mean,
Yeah.
people think the world is, like, ending because of AI and whatever else right now, and, like, people are like, "Oh, Jesus is gonna come back, next week." It's like, maybe, but during World War I and World War II, I'm sure people thought the world was ending.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So Revelation and, the beliefs of the church is, like, it's always living out. I mean, we do believe there will be, like, final beast and whatever else, but there is, like, always a revelation happening right now.
Yeah.
So
And I like this idea that the devil doesn't know when the last days will be, just like none of us do. So he always has to have prepared the Antichrist figure, whether
Wow.
that's Stalin,
Okay.
Hitler, Genghis Khan, like whoever it might be. There needs to be a false prophet and an Antichrist figure prepared to be possessed, right? Because the Revelation talks about that person will be possessed by Satan himself. And so it's like, you look all throughout the last 2,000 years.
Yes.
There's essentially all, whether it's a Roman emperor or, like I said, it's Genghis Khan, or heck, maybe even, Alexander the Great came before Jesus. And I'm Greek, so I'm pro Alexander the Great. Actually, I shouldn't say that because I don't know. I don't know enough. He might have done some nasty stuff. I don't know. But
Yeah.
But yeah. So you
But yeah, so
started getting to Wes Huff stuff, and then how did you like get in touch with him to then connect him to Mark and
Yes.
like,
So I'll give you this context. So Mark became my client, and what I do in my business is I run people's social media, essentially help them get big, all the good things, take their content to the new level, help them with their offers, everything in between. And I was helping Mark, and Mark and Billy were friends, right? Because they lived in the same neighborhood, and their sons were friends. So their sons played basketball together and stuff. And Mark had Billy on maybe like a year earlier. And, Mark and I started really connecting through the Christian faith. Like once he found out like kind of where I was at with it, and I was learning and like really deep, that really deepened our bond.
what's
Um,
Mark's full name again, by the way?
Mark Menard.
Menard, right. You guys can
Mhm.
look up his podcast. It's good.
Yeah, super good. Elevating Beyond. And I had this idea, and I was like, hey, Mark, so at this time, Billy Carson had been going on a podcast run with like Rogan, Andrew Schultz, what's that one army dude?
Oh, Jocko Willink.
No, I think he was a Marine.
Oh,
Sean something.
yeah, Sean. I was gonna say Strickland. That's the MMA player.
No, different.
I know exactly who you mean.
Yeah. The whole summit, right, or circuit rather, of podcast, and Patrick Bet David too.
Sean
And
Ryan.
one thing, yes, Sean Ryan. One thing that stood out to me in Billy's podcast that kind of was irking me and bothering me as, somebody who was really seeing how Jesus is who he says he was. I was like very passionate, like, hey, like this is my God. You can't just throw these statements out without validity and backing them, because he was saying
Right.
some pretty crazy things, like Jesus was married and
Yeah, it's a Mary Magdalene.
Jesus
Stuff
wasn't
like that.
crucified. And I'm like deep into the history. I'm like, the crucifixion is one of the most like solid historic events ever documented by multiple sources, even outside of Christianity.
Yeah.
Like even outside of Christian.
Josephus, Tacitus, Pliny the Younger, etc.
Yeah. It's like, okay, you're just peddling nonsense, and you're trying to create these clickbait things to like over emotionalize something people take very, personal and serious because it's their religion. And it's like, you're making this into a little like game. And I just noticed him doing it, and it just kind of pissed me off.
Same. I actually remember at that same time I saw his face pop up everywhere, and when he was on Rogan too. And Rogan was very early in his curiosity of Christianity days, not being so hostile. And then he's just like, wow, I didn't know that. I'm like, yeah, but it's not true though. And now millions of people are hearing this.
Exactly. And I was just like, dude, this is so dumb. And I there was this kind of like, I'll show you. So, I put on my strategic mastermind, like social media hat of like, okay, what's the play? And I prayed on it, and it was very obvious to get Wes Huff. So I told Mark, I was like, dude, Mark, you've had a podcast with Billy in the past. You guys didn't really talk about your faith. You just talked more about business and whatnot. I was like, we should bring him back, but I want to show you these clips. So I got like all the clips from like Rogan, PBD, all these guys. And I showed, look at what Billy said about Jesus here. Look about what Billy said about Jesus here. Look about what, and Mark was just like, whoa, and I said, you should have a conversation with Billy, and we should plan to rebuttal all these rejections. And what I did was like, I would show the clip of like Billy, saying some nonsense about Jesus wasn't crucified, or the Sinai Bible says this or this or that.
Right.
And then I inserted a clip of Wes Huff explaining that actual text or that thing. And I said, literally, let's just study Wes's talking points, and then you can bring this up. I was like, this would be great. And then him and I are in a meeting, and we start talking. It was like, what if we could just get Wes on the podcast? And we were like, yeah, let's do that. So the interview was planned, and literally less than 24 hours before, like, we had this meeting, it's like, because Mark isn't like a theologian. He's just somebody who had a personal experience with God, Jesus specifically. And it was like, he's not really qualified to do this at the highest level. And I'm thinking through the lens of social media and like, all the things. And there's a part of me that's like, I want to cook this guy. I mean, I want to see him lose. because this
Well,
isn't
and I think
right.
it's good for Christians to know and like just have a little bit of grace. Like we don't all have to be straight up apologists. Like not everyone is meant to go on a podcast and
Absolutely.
defend the faith to millions of people. So just so you guys
Most
hearing this,
people shouldn't actually.
right?
They make it look really bad.
I do think it's a spiritual gift to be able to teach and lead
Oh,
and communicate
100.
effectively. So listen, I think we should all study more and we should have the context and have firm belief in our faith, right? It shouldn't, I always say emotional experiences can lead you to faith. Logical understanding should keep you in, right? We should never have blind faith. I don't believe in that. I don't think the Bible teaches that. But my point is, yeah, not everyone should get on podcasts.
Yeah, no, definitely not. But yeah, so Mark ends up contacting Wes through Instagram. Wes gets back to him like right away, like literally within like 30 minutes. It was really quick. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm there." He's like, I'll zoom in." So that happened. And we know the outcome of that. So I was kind of the person behind all
Pop up
that.
the video here and all the views it has.
Yeah, millions and millions of views. And there was a whole thing with that too. And it really solidified my original beliefs that the people in New Age are operating under demonic power. And there is nothing I'm going to say that's personally directed towards Billy, but in his behavior of what happened after that debate, it's very hard to say this is a rational, normal human being. Like there is a spirit emanating this force, and it's not a good spirit. You know,
Right.
there was so much drama. I mean, he tried to sue us. He
I
sent
know.
us all cease and desist.
Oh, you as well.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, he was the maddest at me because he knew I did this. Like he knew he's not dumb. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, he tried to go after me the hardest, and he even said that in like his 3-hour breakdown. Like he had a 3-hour meltdown on a live stream with
I
20,000.
remember. I didn't watch it, but I remember.
Yeah, I have it on my channel. Me and Wes Huff react to it. It's just because he's just making up the craziest claims, man. I mean, he's saying like we're in a mob, all this just nonsense. And I mean, he brought up like my mom, my ex-girlfriend. He brought up all types. He just really tried to hit low. So I was like, I gotta react to this. But anyways, yeah. So
Then came the rise of your YouTube.
yeah, that was the starting point, honestly. And that's when I realized I was like, man, I really probably should start exposing what I know about these people. Um, because I was like, what I know about them is like pretty deep. You know,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of hours with these people. And yeah, so that went super viral, and I started using my social media knowledge to uh, make people know what really happened, and we saw the
Yeah.
downstream effect of that.
Well, it's funny too because you've been the guy behind the scenes for so long, right? So now to build out your own brand, and you're, dude. I mean, so how long has it been since that? Maybe a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. Like
Yeah,
you've
that
been
was
growing fast. Like I see your engagement even on YouTube and the views you get, and like not that it's all about views, but engagement is a metric of obviously people like your
Oh, yeah.
content, and you're doing it right.
Yeah, for sure. My YouTube has grown a lot. I think I have like 32 or 33,000 subscribers now, and
Instagram's popping off too. Like you're doing good, and people obviously are hungry for the kind of stuff you're sharing.
yeah, for sure. And yeah, I mean, it's been a heck of a journey, and to fast forward, kind of like getting pulled out of the deception of the new age world and kind of having really the scales ripped off my eyes and realizing like, you know, because I realized I was like, it's not just enough to believe this. I have to live it too. And that means I have to part ways with all these clients. That was the hardest thing I ever did in my life. I mean, one of the hardest things, I should say, because it hits your ego, right? Especially as like a young man. It's like I just turned 30. Like, I had this very, very successful business and it didn't fail. I fired the clients. Like,
Yeah.
and I pretty much took, I mean, it did over $1 million a year at its peak, but around this time, we're probably doing 700,000-800,000 a year. And I am being like, hey, you person paying me 15 grand a month. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just on a different path. Bye. Hey, you person paying me 6 grand a month. It was
Yeah.
really hard, man. it was so hard. I had to downsize my life. I had to sell my cars, it
Very
was
hard decision.
very, very hard. I moved back to Michigan. I used to live in Boca Raton, Florida. I had a house, a condo right on the beach. Like, I
Wow.
walk 50 feet, I'm at the ocean, private beach. It's
Yeah.
like I let it all go for the sake of really God and my own soul. And I just realized, like, it's not worth it. Like, Christ, or somewhere in the Gospels, like, what's it to profit the world and lose your soul? I mean, I felt like I had a very tangible experience of that. Like, I was losing my, like, soul spiritually.
Yeah.
And it's been very hard and humbling and beautiful to rebuild, because I made it in my mind. I said, I am no longer ever working with somebody who is not a Christian, and they have to be, like, open about their faith. Like, it's not, like someone like Mark. And I said, you know what? I gotta rebuild this. I gotta do this. Like, I got bills to pay and things to do. And my income got all the way down to under 100 grand a year. And it still sounds like a lot to the average person, but when you're at this very high level and you
Yeah.
scale it back at your own beck and call, man, it kind of messes with your head. Cause then, like, afterwards I was like, did I just sabotage? Like, and then you start questioning, like, he's like, no, 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 dude. Like, you were clearly, like, these are not good people. You don't want to push these messages. This is
Right.
clearly evil. Like, so over the past, 3 years, almost 4, I've been rebuilding that. And I'm very, not in an ego way, but very proud of the people I've been able to help in the Christian context. Someone like, Wes Huff and others, where I'm coaching them behind the scenes. And, not a lot of them like hire my agency, but I've really built out the coaching side where I help them grow their business and work on their mindset. And, most Christians are like small, business owners doing 100 grand a year. And it's like, well, if you can double that, it's a pretty substantial change to your life. And you don't have
Sure.
to lose your Christianity in that. And it's been a beautiful thing, man, and it's come with its challenges. And but I'm very grateful, because this was another piece too. I think is really important, is that when I was doing so well financially in the new age, I started to wonder if it was solely because, like, I was working under like some spiritual occult power or something that was giving me all this money and access and whatnot. I really started to wonder this. And then I realized, I said, maybe, but let me see if I can, like, rebuild this in a way where I'm not visualizing and meditating and trying to attract and doing all the things I was doing in the new age. Like, can I just actually rebuild the business in a completely different niche? And actually, I would add, in a counter niche of what I
Mm.
was in, because it's not that, like, new age and Christianity, they're not friends, they're actually enemies. And you learn this once you actually learn what these new age teachers really believe.
Right.
So I
It's
destroyed my
funny how things can look so similar in their parallels, but again, if
yes,
it's 1 degree off of the truth, then it ends up eventually being so far apart. And that's where I
yeah,
think a lot of people get sucked in, because they're like, "Oh, I was raised in the church, and they talk about God, and they talk about positive forces, and it feels in tandem until it becomes completely contradictory."
100%, 100%. And I put myself to the test of, like, I'm going to prove to myself that I'm actually a good entrepreneur. And I virtually restarted my business. I mean, not from scratch, but completely new niche, completely new offer, and no contacts. Like, I didn't really know a lot of Christians. And I destroyed my reputation in the new age because everybody was like, stay away from that guy. Like, he's not on our team anymore. Like, get away from him. And that was hard too, because I had a lot of friends, and not everybody who's a new ager is like a bad person, but it was tough, man. And I completely rebuilt it, and I was like, you know what, I'm really happy that I can stand by, hey, the hard work of what it takes to scale a business is what it takes. Like, the new age stuff
Yeah.
and all that stuff, it's just really smoke and mirrors at the end of the day. Um, and if you want to build a successful company, like, you have to do the work. And it was like, it was like a healing process of me healing, growing my company. I was like, yeah, like, you can make money without having to meditate and work on your energy and, like, be in a positive mindset 24/7. It's like, if you do the principles that work in business and you have a good offer and you do good at marketing, like, you'll make money. you know,
Yeah.
and it was a really healthy thing for me.
Yeah, man. Well, I love it. And I know we're kind of coming up on time. I know you got a hard stop. So, oh, man, there's so many things I want to talk about. So we're going to have
Yeah,
to do, this again. And hopefully when I
yeah,
get my new setup, I'll have you here in person and we can do some more,
definitely.
some bantering in person.
I
But
know it's supposed to be more conversational, but the story is so long,
no, man,
and there's
it's,
like so many pieces I can like put in or keep out depending on like what lane we want to go into. Because like my path to Christ was not linear. Like it was a very like crazy, you know, road.
yeah. No. That, dude, if I wanted to shut you up, I would have shut you up. I
Okay,
love the
cool.
testimony. Obviously, and you're a good communicator as well. So when you share your story, it's easy to listen to. Let's just say, right?
Okay, cool.
Not everyone is easy to listen to. And so that's why I'd love to have you back, and we can skip over the story and dive into a bunch of just like back and
Sure.
forths. But before we wrap up, okay. We'll talk about a final thing in a second, but to keep everyone's retention here, tell everyone where they can find you, how they can follow you, get in touch with you, work with your agency, even like what's the best way to just be in your ecosystem?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to contact me, YouTube or Instagram DMs is probably the best, and then you can just follow my name, Anton Wisbiski, on pretty much my most active platform is YouTube.
Nice. Okay.
Mhm,
I love it.
mhm. And I have like
Now,
a free school community as well
nice.
for it's more geared towards men, but not necessarily. It's just for the Christian high achiever. It's called Modern Monks. It's pretty
Nice.
cool. Yeah.
All right. I'll have to join myself. I didn't even know you had a school
Yeah.
community. So
Yeah,
look at
I
us.
got 3 of them. Yeah.
We
Mhm.
both have YouTube channels. We both have school communities. We both have the same parents.
We
And
both
no, I'm
look the same. That's awesome.
You're getting it's freaking me out a little bit.
Yeah.
But although I'm not Orthodox, not yet. Who knows? Who
You're
knows?
Greek,
I am
man.
Greek.
Come on.
And I'd love to dive into some of even,
Are your
the
parents Orthodox?
Orthodox. My dad was born Greek Orthodox. My mom was born Catholic, and then my
Oh,
dad
cool.
ended up becoming Protestant Christian. Kind of brought my mom
Your
over.
dad
She had a
became
very
Protestant.
similar Catholic experience to you, not knowing anything and just cultural Catholic. Parents couldn't explain things to her. My dad, in the Greek Orthodox, they're more a little bit more into the Bible, if you will, in general. But
Oh,
as he
very, very.
got more and more into the Bible, he kind of moved away from the tradition, moved more into kind
Oh,
of,
wow.
I guess you could say, non-denominational Protestant Christianity. And so that's how I was raised. I've been back
Strange.
and forth to different churches and different denominations, but I would say overall, I would consider myself right now a Bible-believing, non-denominational Protestant Christian.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
just like to say Christian. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I appreciate a lot of the tradition and the rituals of the church, and so I'm not like against a lot of it. I just
Mhm.
have my qualms with certain things that maybe we can get into next time.
Yeah,
So
yeah, sure. So
that
do
being
I. Like,
said,
I think I think all like, I'm not this type of Christian. I was at one point where like, you know, because I was Catholic too. It's like, "You gotta be Catholic. It's the true church." Like, "Oh, you gotta be Orthodox." And I'm just like, "Dude, honestly, like, my priest or no Orthodox person would approve of what I'm gonna say, but, like, I don't think we should major in minor things. Like, I think so
right,
many people major in the minor nuances, and when you do that, you really miss God, you know? Like, it's so
I
much
agree.
more simple, I think, than people make it. I really do believe that, and
Okay.
I also, you know, I'm sure you don't really have a big Orthodox audience, and people wouldn't the Orthodox
Well,
and
don't
the
assume.
that's true, that's true. Um, but I mean, the Orthodox, their mindset sometimes is like, "Oh, don't listen to a Protestant." Like, you know, they're under that
Mm,
mindset, and I'm not like that. Like, I'm reading a book right now on the Reformation. Like, I
mm,
want to understand, not have straw mans. Like, because you'll like, I learned that, like, as a Protestant, I realized how many people strawman Catholics. As a
right.
Catholic, I learned how many people strawman Protestants. You know, as Orthodox, it's like you kinda get a blend of it all. So, I've come to learn it's like, what's most important is like, okay, where does Jesus fit into this? Is it about the ritual or is it about Jesus? It's like, that's a very important thing. A lot of
Right.
people, it's about the ritual. It's like, you know, Catholics and Orthodox, we get communion every time, and some Protestants do too. And it's like some people have zero reverence. They don't even know what's going on. It's like, you know what we're doing? Like, we're literally eating the body and blood of our Lord. Like, this is a pretty big deal, like, it's not just some casual, like, we just do this every Sunday. And, I think, at the same time, like, there are people who are Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestant who are not saved, and there are people who are Protestant, Orthodox, and Catholic who are saved.
Agreed.
So I got, and I can spit theology. I mean, I've studied theology intensely for 3 years, like a madman. Like,
Yeah.
I know my stuff, and I don't want to like toot my own horn. I almost went to seminary. Like, I was contemplating all of these things.
Yeah.
But I've learned in that so much of God is forgotten.
Yeah.
Truly. Yeah.
Yeah, the squabbles of the church often depress me more than, the issues of the world, because it's like, man, like you said, majoring in the minor things, right? I always break it down. Is this a salvation issue, or is this a back and forth, theological preference issue, or is it, and there's some things
Or is
that
it
it's
even
okay.
language?
Right.
That's
And
what
there's
I'm
some things
learning.
we don't also need to have the for sure answer, because it's not a salvation issue. And I like disagreeing on certain things and seeing someone else's point of view. But I do believe God leaves love letters, and we might not always be ready for that full conversion. And for you, it was a process, right? Some people genuinely, they have this like life-changing moment, and overnight, I've heard stories of like people that are like, full-blown Satanists into Christian in like one day, or whatever it might be. But then a lot of us, or a lot of people, just it takes time. It's a process, because there's a lot of unlearning to do as well, right? So that's why, like I said before, emotional experiences can point you in the right direction, but logical understanding keeps you moving in that direction with conviction and purpose. And so, dude, love talking to you always. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
And like I said, dude, we could go on for another 3-4 hours probably talking about just one of these topics, never mind deep diving on all of them. So we'll do this again, but I appreciate you. And you told everyone where to find you. I'll post those in the comments, or I should say in the description, and I'll pop it up on your face.
Awesome,
your face is beautiful because we have the same face, but I'll pop it up below.
We do have a lot of similarities.
You don't have tattoos though, right? Or not as many, at least?
No tattoos.
All right. I'll be your tattooed version of you. So if you ever want to know what you look like with tattoos, just
That's awesome.
All right, my friend. Have a great one, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Ciao.
Got it.